And welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. We are taking part today in the eTalk Halloween Marathon event. So you have us for the next 2 hours, and we are going to attempt something that I'm not even sure is possible, but we're going to do our best. And when I say we, I am joined with some of you are familiar with on this show, Matthew Mournian.
Thank you.
And we are welcoming to this series Cal Malkez. He was on The Energy That Surrounds Us, and our topic today is to see how much of the astral travel we can and astral plane we can cover in 2 hours.
That's a lot.
That is a tall order, sir. But anyway, thank you for inviting me.
So I'm going to give you both a chance to give a little bit of your backstory to the guests for this event. So I will let Cal take it from there.
Awesome. Well, let me make sure my mic is actually in the right spot here. There we go. Something like that. Yeah. There we go. Perf. So I actually got my start in this whole strange astral projection field quite a long time ago. I noticed that going through my spiritual journey that I was experiencing this like boundary. I was coming up against a limitation, and that limitation was being able to communicate with the other side, being able to experience more of that. All I was feeling was really energy at first. You know, I had an ability, an empathic sort of connection to things, and I could always feel energy. Unfortunately, I had a difficulty tapping into deeper things. And I know some people have that ability naturally to go into the astral and things like that. But it's something I had to learn step by step. It took a very long time to figure it out. But when I did, it started for me with hypnosis. I initially had the belief that if I wanted to unlock my abilities, I had to unlock the potential and the power of my mind. And so that's what I set out to do. And so hypnosis, self-hypnosis was the first thing that I used to do that. Self-hypnosis taught me to relax. Oh no. I'm going to cut out.
Are we glitching?
Okay, well, thank you for that, and Matthew.
Oh, thank you as well. Unfortunately, I think we missed the
Still here? We
last
still good?
bit of what he was saying. He might even still be speaking. I noticed he was glitching out. I'll sort of like allow a second if you want to finish what you were saying. We had there was a big cut there. Anyway,
Oh,
go
no.
ahead, Cal. I'm sorry. Uh-oh. Is he frozen? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, for the sake of keeping it going, I'll just keep going. Hopefully I'm not talking over you.
It's a bit choppy.
I know that
Hopefully.
you were sort of, there's a little bit of a glitching thing. Anyway, my name is Matthew. I guess we could say at this stage of the journey, I'm a professional psychic reader and an energetic practitioner. Hopefully the signals like rolling through properly, but I think that I don't know if I'm an anomaly. I don't know what it was, but I actually started the process of astral travel accidentally as a result of having a freak, like crazy crown chakra activation in 2015. And so for me, it was a thing that I had tried to do at another stage of my life. But I mean, from such a surface level, it was more trying to understand if it was real, and honestly, more trying to understand what was wrong with me. But later on, it was just a thing that started happening. Nowadays, it's been about 8 years, and I would say nowadays, what I discovered during that stage of my journey, and I think what I picked up has changed greatly from the perspective of now we kind of use that opening, I think, within the energy field in a little bit of a different way. Instead of moving outward into what we might call the galaxy, I'm sort of bringing it inward into the inner body. And so it's kind of lent itself to a little bit of, I guess we could call medical mediumship, but hopefully my signal is even working. So I will pause right there. But anyway, that's kind of how it started for me.
You're coming in crystal clear, Matthew. Even Aurora commented you're coming in clear, and hopefully with Cal's location, the glitching will be to a minimum. And I apologize, I didn't notice the glitch, and when I did, I realized I'd already started with Matthew, so I will try to catch those a little bit better. But so Cal, we actually have a question for the panel. And Woo Riders DG is saying, what has the phenomenon given and taken from you the most?
It's an interesting question. I hope I'm coming through good.
You're coming through good right now.
You're good.
I've been choppy, so hopefully I can provide some sort of answer. The main thing that it's given is this sense of expansion, this sense of more, because that's one thing I was seeking a lot when trying to do this sort of thing and tap into it. For me, it was, is there something more? And then I started to astral project, and I started to see, oh, there's a lot more. There are beings out here. There are places that I can reach. There's more of myself that I can understand. And I can say what it took from me was the illusion, the Maya behind all of this, the sense of, or what people call the illusion of separation, like this idea that I'm not connected to everyone. And astral projecting is like stripping back a layer of your ego and experiencing life much more fully. And so I'd say those are the two things. It took away my fear of death, showed me that there was more out there, and it also took away that limitation of, I'm not this other person. In fact, we're everyone. We're experiencing all of this at the same time together. Whoa. Hope that came through good.
It did perfectly.
It did. Perfectly. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'll just kind of comment after that and say, I don't know that I could have said that any better than you did there, but and I guess I'll say an even stranger thing. You'll be like, what? And then he said this: you have so much wisdom in your voice. As a person that listens to people and talks with people on Zoom literally every day, I've noticed over the years that there's a certain frequency or like a threshold that people will reach within the openness of their auric field. And it usually for me shows within the voice. And so, I mean, I'm sure you already know that in your own way, but it's very, very cool to kind of pop in on a random encounter and be like, and I know you have those moments as well where you'll like hear someone and see them and go, oh, that dude's for real. Okay. And also I say that because a lot of times you'll watch a lot of people talking about certain things, energies and like experiences. And it's not to say that we would be like, whatever, that's not real. But you will also learn to recognize that there's a frequency of like, I don't know. I understand you're still piecing that all together, but anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot of authenticity in the way you speak about that experience. And I very much agree. I would say what it also gave me, at least for me, was an understanding. And this very much goes along with what you're saying, was that I had a different role and that there was a certain path and I call it, like my mission. There was a mission that was shown to me through the very early stage experiences I had when for me, it was accidental and my energy field had been ripped open so crazy that year that I would literally fall out of my body, which is crazy. I did not know it was possible until it started happening to me. And so for me, it was horrible. And I thought I was losing my mind. And I had to honestly kind of pull my energy body back together, which Qigong was the thing that really completely changed it for me. And so for me, I think it sort of gave me meaning from the perspective that it opened me up into a different world, a world that became more real than what I was experiencing here. Worlds in which, I got to physically touch certain types of extraterrestrial beings or what I understood them to be in those places. And it was like, because those to me had become more real than a lot of things here, I think it helped me understand that there was so, kind of like you were saying, there's so much more to what this was. And I honestly wish that I could still move so effortlessly in and out of the body. I know there's a lot of density and emotional changes that occur, but it really gave me a whole other view of the world. And then I would say the thing that has taken from me, not that there's a thing that it takes, but I have noticed during the stages in which I was knee deep in like completely dissociating from the physical body, I would also tend to dissociate from this world as well, like the 3D, which isn't always bad, right? Because sometimes you're like, you feel yourself distancing from the fakeness of the world. You know what I mean? But then there's these times where you want to kind of reach back into it. And it's like, dude, this means nothing now. You know what I mean? And so, anyway, I could go on and on, but I will pause there. That's how it's been.
No, thank you. And before I answer, I just want to share with everybody, because I keep looking away, and it's not that I'm not interested in the topic. There's a show chat for the eTalk network on my phone, and so I want to make sure I don't miss a question from the network, and so that's what I keep checking. But my answer to this question is, it's given me the ability to see we are more than just what's here in this world, that we have also the ability to visit other places, meet other people, travel, and have experiences that I feel like we were meant to have, and the freedom to do it in a way that we can understand it and that it has the biggest impact for us. And by impact, I mean growth and an understanding of who we truly are. It gives us a kind of an awakening. What has it taken from me? I would have to say I agree with both of you of what it's taken from me, and also I agree with Matthew. I'm not quite sure that it actually takes anything bad from us. I think if anything, yeah, it just takes away the mindset of we are alone in the universe. All life is here. There's nothing out there. And that is something I feel like is squirrel alert, that is beneficial to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel you. Yeah, I agree.
So I'm curious, Matthew. We talked about it a little bit when you were on here before, and I want to take a moment, and Kel as well, have you both kind of give a brief, if you can, in a brief way, explain what is the astral plane to you. And when you guys are done, I'll give mine as well.
I'm wondering if Cal could start on that one. I feel like you have a lot more current like experience, like within that space.
Sure. Absolutely. Am I coming through all right? I'm afraid
Yes,
of getting started. That's kind of okay. I would first off say, in my experience, the astral plane is okay. So let me put it like this. This is a really good, really dense question. We are in a type of bubble from my experience in this place. This 3D reality is a bubble. And we're in like a Russian nesting doll of this conscious experience. And what's happening when I astral project, it's almost like something clicks, something flips over, and I'm no longer limited to this. I can traverse the next like bubble, the next, experience outside of this. I'd call that the astral realm proper, or, something like that. I've heard it described by other practitioners and teachers as the real time zone, or just like the astral double of this reality. But the very next space beyond this three-dimensional reality, I would call that like the astral mind, if you will. That's why I base everything off of it, like my website, everything I do, because when you're outside of this reality, you start to see how everything else blossoms, how everything else expands naturally. This reality is so dense, it's so it's like a grosser reality. Everything here is difficult. The movement of energy is much slower. But when you project, you start to realize, oh, I'm in this like expansive zone right now. And the higher you begin to vibrate, the more energy you allow to move through you, the higher you're able to move through these different realms. As far as their representation perceptually, the different realms are only limited by your ability to perceive them or your imagination. With that, I mean, you've astral projected, for instance, and you're experiencing what you believe to be your room or some immediate environment where you projected. The only reason you're experiencing that and not anything else in feasible consciousness is because you believe you only need to see that. Your perception in the astral realm is only limited by your ability to perceive. I know that sounds difficult to hold on to, and forgive me if it is, but you can experience absolutely anything instantaneously. And you're only parsing it sequentially because your mind is trained to do that. Like our human experience has trained us to see things as sequential. I'm here now. I'm seeing this now. I astral projected. Oh, I'm seeing this. I'm having this experience. When in fact, when you astral project, you're moving away from just this egoic identity. I'm not Cal when I astral project. I'm everything. I'm just choosing what I'm focusing my lens of awareness on. And so if I had to sum it up into a nice elevator pitch, I'd say astral projection, the astral realm, is more of an exploration of who you truly are beyond the body. Hope that helps. That makes some sense.
Damn.
No, that was like mic drop. I'm so glad Matthew's going next.
No. Honestly, man, that is brilliantly articulated. I'm gonna make it really dumb. Get ready. I'm gonna now. I'll give you the really dumb, oversimplistic version. People that know me out there will go, "Here comes Matthew, who's gonna grossly oversimplify the whole thing." I often call it that sort of out of body shared non-physical, if you want to put a number on it, fourth density astral space. And I tend to be a person that kind of explains it through what I have experienced within that space. And what I've been shown and experienced within that space is that essentially all is known and all is possible. And just as you said, it's only limited by what we understand to be real. And I would also say it's limited, at least me, and maybe this is me in a different state of understanding, that I would say it's also limited by what we understand is possible within the realm of time. Because one of the things I noticed when I believed that I was first truly leaving the body, which for me, I wish I could say it was deliberate. And I know later on that changed very much. And I worked with people to really kind of help work with that. But for me in the beginning, it was like there was a ride that was going to occur and somebody would show up and it was like, I guess I'm going, you know what I mean? And so for me, I think it was just something that was slated to occur, along with almost like an accidental opening within the body. And what I had found was that there was years, in certain cases, there was times in which I believe that I had spent what were, and sounds crazy, and I'm sure you kind of know what I'm talking about in your own way, Cal, entire lifetimes within like moments, entire worlds, entire literal whole eons of existence that I would somehow live and then come back and have to somehow conceptualize the idea that, like, okay, that was that, I'm still here, I'm still me, I'm in this. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about it from that perspective of you almost, or the way I took from what you were saying is that almost like you're choosing your avatar form within that sort of astral space. And I don't know, I just thought it was brilliant, you know, the way you had said that, or that's the way I had interpreted it. But anyway, I'm kind of just ranting on it now. But
no, I love that. Yeah, I love how you explain that, and it does have that personability and that experience to it. It's very Gnostic in the way you describe it, and I tend to want to stay in the realm of what I've experienced and what I feel. And as you're telling me that, I'm feeling the energy from that. It reminds me of my own experiences, and what I feel like would be closer to home for some people is a documentary called DMT, The Spirit Molecule. Yeah, it's great. If you haven't seen it, I think it's still on Netflix. I'm not sure, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere. One of the main things that allured me to that I really enjoyed was people's explanation of what it was like to have the layers of their ego peeled back as they had these experiences. And almost 100% of the time, they would say, I had this experience where I wasn't me anymore, and it lasted for lifetimes. I was there for eons. I don't know how long I was there. And reintegration was difficult.
Yep.
And for me, that was a really difficult thing. You mentioned that earlier, and you said you would just pop out of body. And it's funny because that was my experience as well. And when I teach people, they're often surprised by how fluid it is, especially it's like breaking the seal. Your first projection afterward, it's like, for me, it was just like rolling over in the morning. I was out of body. I'd be just sitting and relaxing, and I'd sink through the couch and be like, oh, all right, we're doing this now. And so it's really interesting because it's easy to move beyond the boundary of this once you felt what it's like on the other side of it, if you've had that.
Yeah. I have a question that I would like to ask you, and this might take it in a weird place, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Some of us, I think, have had the accidental or the sudden out of body experience through trauma in this life. As I'm sure you've heard, we'll check out of the body, and then some of us cultivate it later on. I'm curious if in your experience of what you've seen and also talked to with other people, does that lead to differences in how one might experience the so-called astral realm if that opening within your energy body came, versus through deliberate exploration or through a traumatic thing? Hopefully that makes sense in the way I'm asking that. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. I just knowing from the psychological standpoint, the dissociation and derealization that happens during traumas and PTSD and things like that, people develop a skill to dissociate. And so it happens in adolescence and the early teenage years specifically. You'll naturally have this ability to astral project, and what a lot of people will experience is sleep paralysis, this hypnagogic state, and that's a byproduct. Dreams will be nightmarish. You'll have these night terrors and things like that, and that's from the trauma aspect of it. Your body is forced to learn how to adapt these abilities to handle your stressful environment. Overly stressed, so you're going to find a way to distance, barricade yourself from that. I think if I'm answering your question right, you can reach the projected state. You can have that experience from both instances. And for instance, when it comes to trauma, you have things like near-death experiences. People go through these horrific accidents and they project and they see themselves laying there. And then they come back and report, oh, I saw everything. I had this experience.
Yeah.
And then there are people on the other hand who have an amazing energetic awakening and they project like that. Either way, you're still having the same experience. It's just the modality is different. Me personally, I would prefer it would happen energetically for everyone, but not everyone has that all the time. Sometimes it does happen via trauma. But either way, it still gives you the same lesson. It's like, I'm more than just this body, either way.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great question.
Yeah. And I have to say, to me, wow, I'm not even sure I can even add to that. You guys are just nailing it. But one of the things that I would like to point out to me is I was talking, I believe it was with you, Cal, that we came up with this where I was looking at it and saying, is the astral plane the real world where we are truly able to be ourselves? And where we are now is our 3D version of the Matrix. And that's where going into the astral world, that's why when we come back, it's like, ooh, wait a minute. This feels so foreign to us and we have a harder time here. So I'm curious if you both want a chance here to expand on that with your perspectives and thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I will say one thing which kind of goes along with what Cal was saying with the whole that sort of inner, I don't know if you want to call it death or whatever occurred. That was one of my early stage experiences. It's funny to hear you mention that here. Honestly, with DMT, actually, when I was like, what is this thing called DMT? And this was like 2008, before I knew anything in the world. And I was like, I'm just gonna order it online, and I'm just gonna follow these directions and just cook it at home and make this, just because you could at that time. And oh my Lord, was I ever not ready for that? And I did. I got taken into this realm. That's exactly what I was talking about. I lost my identity. I lost my body. I lost every single piece of myself. I had to live in this void realm, literally, in which eventually I had to find like some sort of an atomic molecule type thing. And I was like, that's mine. And I had to like literally piece myself back together. And then at some point I was like, okay, my name. I have a name. It was like I finally found my name again, and it was like boom, and then I came back into the body, and it was like one of those like, how long was I gone? I'll never do it again, one of those moments. But it fundamentally changed me. And honestly, years later I went back and had experience with it again, and they were very healing. And but yeah, definitely. And I would say that I also had the death experience with Bufo as well, the 5-MeO DMT. Definitely. Like, talk about a death. I know that happens to a lot of people, but I was not ready for it. I was excited, but I was like, I had no idea the level to which I could be taken to that other, some other realm. And anyway, not to go on and on, but there is a good period of readjustment after that. And anyway, yeah.
Oh, that's powerful. And that's you'd be surprised how many times I've heard that exact experience,
Yeah.
that trip report. That I've had it myself as well, where it's like I don't know who I am, I don't know where I am. I call it the void.
Yep.
I've heard it, the place that you describe. I've heard it called I've heard it called samadhi or actualization or the divine om, and I've tried describing it. It's not a sense of I'm here and everything else is there. It's almost just like I am this experience. I am everywhere. It's just this surreal feeling of being boundless, but at the same time you're choosing where to keep your awareness. Like I'm choosing to experience this here. And I even had it in one instance where I had projected, and for anyone interested, because I feel like there's some people who can project and they need practical steps. If you're able to raise your kundalini when you're out of body, raising that energy is how you continually ascend. That's how you continually move throughout the different realms. In my experience, that's what I've had. When I've done that and I've reached this very silent Buddhic, some people have called it the Buddhic realm. This just silence, this emptiness, but there's like an om, this vibration that kind of permeates this place. Just like you, it's just like I had to grab onto one molecule of myself.
Yeah.
The wiggle your big toe sort of experience.
Yeah, very much.
It's like one thing comes back. You get like a glimpse of who you were, like a memory will come back or something. Be like, oh wait, I was Cal in this. I'm in a room. There's carpet underneath me, and you start to feel that again. It's like, oh wait, where am I? I have to remember. I have to pull myself out of this.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's magnetic, but it is very powerful. The ability to move beyond this 3D, this dense, almost matrix. It's very jarring to kind of go out into the middle of the ocean, be like, whoa, I'm actually out here. How do I get back? So it's very interesting that you would state it like that. I had to grab onto pieces of myself. That's what it's like. It's like putting together pieces of this puzzle of who you were to get back.
Oh yeah.
You must have taken a lot.
I honestly, at that stage of my journey, I had no idea. It was really just like, like the foolishness of like youth and early, like, oh yeah, we could do this thing. And it was like, those moments where you're like, oh wow, I had no idea. I had no possible idea what I was playing with there. But honestly, it's funny to note that during that experience and the coming back from it, and what had happened to me in years later, I think that from what I've learned in the time since, that there were a number of early stage, what I call timeline shifts, like physical kind of reality changes that I went through. And that was actually one of those sort of we in the world of tarot we call it the star. It was going to happen. It was inevitable. Like you were going to trip and fall into this thing, and it was because there was a process that was meant to occur for me later on, which I guess just for me it's all been accidental. Like none of it I ever knew was going to happen. And so anyway, I could go on and on about it, but
That's powerful. Very.
No, I agree. And we actually have a couple questions I think are very interesting and kind of correlate to what we're talking about. I hope I'm pronouncing this name right. Sheba We Knew says, "Hi, can you get stuck in the astral?"
Go ahead, Cal.
Sure. I don't know if this experience will translate for other people, but me personally, I've had a lot of experience with like self-induced sleep paralysis, self-induced altered states, just through whether it be like breath work or I'm getting into a trance state. It's one of the things I teach is how to get into trance and alter brainwave activity. When you start to mess around like that, you see the impermanence of this reality and how it is just something you've thought up. It takes a minute to get there, but I remember a specific experience where, and this is something I'll give because I love giving techniques so that people can see that things are pretty serious and that they work. Before bed, I was doing a chakra breathing technique. I don't hear too many people talk about using this technique or using techniques like it, but they are very powerful just for energetic activation. I went to bed and just laying in bed, I usually just meditate after I do my ritual work. I'll just lay in bed and kind of sit in the energy. This particular time I was breathing in and out through the third eye chakra. Just imagine breathing. Like I'm not a sorcerer all the time. I'm not actually moving wind through my head, but just that imagine breathing is enough to activate that center. And I did that with a mantra that I was going to be aware or lucid in my dream or in my projection. I'm going to remember my projection experience. And next thing you know, I clicked out, I just blacked out, and I was in a house having an experience. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was very visceral, very real, more real than this. And I say that because it's like every part of your body feels when you're out of body, which is a strange thing to say, but it's like it's like the HD 4K of this reality. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm doing this thing now. And I had a conversation with my higher self. And, in the conversation, I was learning things. I was like, oh, this is great. This is going awesome. I'm ready to go now. And I'm going to go back to my body. And I had the experience of waking up. I sat up in my bed and there was still this strangeness to things. It was very peculiar. And I noticed like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't my room. Where am I right now? And I was in the same house that I was in before in the previous experience. And I was like, okay, that's not right. And then I felt this pressure in my third eye, this really intense pressure in my head. And it was like I fell through the floor and I was back in a bed and I woke up again. And I did that probably 10 times trying to get out of it. And I was like, okay, where do I go? What's going on? How do I stop this? Over and over and over again, just stuck in this loop. And it eventually stopped. Maybe it was like an energy dissipation. I don't know. Maybe I was layers and layers deep into this space, but it stopped on its own. I have no idea what stopped it. Just next thing you know, I wake up finally like, oh, is this it? I'm here. Okay, this is done. All right. It's just, I was afraid too. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to get stuck. It's possible to work yourself up so much so that it's like putting fuel in a rocket. When you put enough fuel in there, you're going to go a certain distance. And if anyone is a psychonaut, they like, psychedelic experiences. You may know Hunter S. Thompson and his quote, buy the ticket, take the ride. Sometimes you work yourself up into the spiritual experience that you just have to ride it out. So you're not getting stuck, but it's like you've fueled the rocket. Now you've got to go as high as it's going to go. Hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. I really, really feel you on that one. I will say to that, it sounds like you and I have had many of those same experiences, all the way down to breathing through the chakras. There's a couple of people here that know me. They'll probably be like, oh my God, this is literally what one of the things that we talk about, using mantras to create chakra dilation within the body, so that, because at least for me, that was the stage when, things really, really started moving. And I don't know about you. For me, I would say, in terms of getting stuck out there, really the only time in which I felt that I got stuck in a place was during the early stage DMT experiences. But here's what's wild. Just like you had mentioned, there was a stage where I was super obsessive. I go through these obsessive cycles, and I was like, I'm going to learn how to really, really leave the body at will. And it actually worked. And I trained with this lady for pretty much a whole year straight. She's amazing. Her name is Henda. If anyone wants to get a hold of her, she would be a cool person to have on your show. But I actually had that exact thing that you talk about, where after an experience, I had woken up and I was in my room and I turned my head to the right and I was like, and it was like a different table and it was in a different position and I could see the things on the table, and I was like, it was like utter and complete fear. And it was like so visceral that I'm blessed that I did not have to go through a cycle of it, but it was like so visceral and real that I was like, snap. And all of a sudden I came, just like you said, I shot through some opening, and then I woke up again and I was like, and you're like, okay, I'm here. It's real.
It's over.
It's just okay. This is my place. All right. And it was kind of a turning point for me. And so it's really interesting to hear that. And then I guess I never really sort of got stuck out there, but I'll tell you, I did get kicked out of places. And there was a stage in the beginning where I was so just gung-ho and balls out trying to like leave the body. And honestly, it really worked for me for a time, and really, really successfully. And I would end up in places, and I talked about it on a lot of live streams, but the most visceral one was I accidentally projected into this bank down the street from my house in Los Angeles, California, a literal Wells Fargo bank. I don't know how. I just was like, holy shit, I'm in the bank. Oh my God, this is the bank. And in the back of the bank was a giant, and he was like curled up in the corner, like kind of like this, like in the, in the room. And he just looked at me and was like, you're not supposed to be here. And I just went, wham, and it was like slammed into my body as if someone pushed me. And it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I won't. Okay. And so for me, I guess it was a lot of accidental, haphazard, kind of just foolish things, which I've also, in going through that, which kind of sucks. There was a stage where I would actually project into what I believe to be like lower levels of like semi hell realms. And then there was a stage later on, right before I started writing the book that I wrote, where I actually came in contact with some of the beings that were literally in those hell realms. They told me their names, their actual literal demonic beings. And that was actually a difficult one, because it was almost like, kind of like you were saying, I was taken on a ride to see things, to be shown like this is a place that exists. And it's like, even still to this day, I don't really know how to talk about it. And it's not so much like because there's fear or avoidance. It's just, it's like a version of reality that's so bizarre and twisted that it really hit me, like in a way where I was like, wow, I honestly hope I don't have to ever see that again. I'm not upset that I did, but it was like, holy shit type stuff. And so, anyway, I'll just go on and on, but I definitely feel you, man.
Yeah, I hear that.
And I would like to add on that about getting stuck in the astral. There are realms, I feel, in the astral. I like to call them the shadow realms, where the energy just starts to siphon you and drain you. And yes, you can theoretically get stuck there if you stay there too long and don't sever ties with that. And that can be where you'll be, like, say, for, perspective is, say, Matthew over here's high and, moving around a lot, and all of a suddenly just starts mellowing, slowing down, and just stops. And it's like, I don't have energy anymore. I'm just sitting here. Why can't I move? It's because you're still attached and being drained by energy there that you came in contact with. And so that's how it can look, and how you can be stuck, in my opinion, in the astral is you go somewhere, make an attachment with something, not realizing it, and don't cut the ties.
Yeah.
feel you.
Definitely. A lot of people don't cut the ties, and that's a big part of what I do now is just helping people cleanse and cut those cords. In my astral experience, like I told you on our talk, in our first talk, my first projection experience, I was pulled out of my body by something else. And it was only after several years of projecting and learning and kind of growing in that, did I meet that being again and have conversations with it and start to learn from it. And then I realized that it was like a double of me. It was like an energetic representation of me. And so then I start looking back into like different cultures. I'm studying different religious texts and, you know, different spiritual cultures all the time, as I'm sure everyone is, because thanks to the internet. But I came across this idea of like a guardian spirit in Egyptian lore, that this idea that there's a spirit that guides you from birth and it guides you through the afterlife. And I believe that's what I encountered. And what happens is I see now that the astral core that people talk about, because I never saw it at first. It was only after connecting with this spirit, this being, I call it the astral echo, I start to see, oh, I'm connected to it through this cord. I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. The more beings I meet, the more I start to see I'm connecting myself, like from the heart. It's like there's a cord connected to us. And I've even seen it in actual people, like in this physical place, that there's something attached to them. There'll be a shadow next to them, and there'll be like a cord, or there'll be some energetic representation of a connection. I feel like a lot of times people can't project because they're either not connected to the right thing or they're connected to the wrong thing. You know, they're not connected to this guardian spirit or their higher self, and they're connected to something darker, more malicious, something from these lower hell realms. I have not seen the lower hell realms, but I've come very close to being shown. And in that instance where I was about to be shown, I saw the scape, this like desert wasteland, fiery sort of place. And I was like, no, I'm good. I don't want to see that. And they were like, okay. You know, it was a very strange experience. And I saw it and I was like, no, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I started to actually like sink through the floor as I started to see this image in the astral. Like, no, I'm cool. I don't want to see that. And so you're much braver than I am. They wanted to show you specifically.
I don't think I really had a choice.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, no. Yeah, like I was saying, I don't even know that I had a choice in that. Like for me, it was as a result of an experience that happened after the first QHHT session that I had, and it helped me understand why I had not done QHHT up until that point, despite engaging in so many other things. Because during that experience, I was shown that there was some sort of a gateway that had been opened up within my body, and after the QHHT experience, I was able to go back into those lives. And during the stage in which I was preparing to write the book, it was like as if some doorway opened. It's funny because I just did a fast, like it just ended last week where I didn't eat for like 10 days, and I could feel that memory tunnel open up again. And it was essentially just this sort of opening in my field, and I could view past lives like with crazy, like not even good, not even cool clarity, not even the kind that you want because you'll get stuck in it. But within that, I had learned that I had during other lives, I had made pacts and like connected in negative fashion. And some of those beings had said, look, we have a contract and there's a certain thing you will be shown. We'll give you a choice. Now you have a choice if you want to engage with it. But here, we're going to show you something. And I think for me, that's really what it was, because after that experience, it was almost like they were done. And there was no like, you know what I mean? There was no hangover. It was just like, okay, there you go. And it was almost like they just dropped me as if like, oh, you know, and then it was gone. And so to me, I took that, and I'm still kind of putting it all together because that was only about, you know, just about two years ago, but it for me, it was an example of a soul contract where it was like, this was going to happen. Remember this place? We'll show it to you again. And now you get to decide, type of a thing. And so I guess I'm kind of grateful, but it was not a cool one. I'll just mention one thing, and I'm curious if you've ever encountered any beings like this. There was a stage where I would get pulled out of my body, and it was like I would enter these sort of prisons. And in this one specific occurrence, I was brought through this prison, and I was put in a room with two creatures. And one of the rooms was this fly. It was a fly that was the size of a car. like a big car, like a truck, and I just had to sit in the room and look at this fly. And I was in this room, and all I could feel from it was sorrow and sadness. And it was like, I was just like, okay, I have to experience it. And then I was put in the room with this huge rat being, like a giant, seething, throbbing rat. And all I could feel from it was his yearning for some kind of food or some kind of hunger. And it was like I was just taken there to have the experience of like, we're going to show you this feeling. And then poof, you would get pulled out, and bizarre stuff. But anyway, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. It's starting to come to me now that we've had a lot of the same experiences. It's like, oh, of course we have. That only makes sense. I've projected to this place again, shown. It is a lot of being shown. That's why I feel like connecting with the right things, opening yourself up to things like your higher self, and making those connections. And QHHT is good for that, especially. And then Dolores Cannon setting that up, and I went through someone a few years ago now, and I had that communication, that contact with my higher self, and it was very interesting. And I feel like, just like you, from that point, there was like an energetic doorway had opened, and so it was like, oh, okay, I can have this experience more. And I think it had to do with the communication. But when I met my mentor, he told me about a story where he was in his bed, and he felt as though he was starting to spin in his bed, and he kept his eyes closed, and all of a sudden he felt like he was actually moving somewhere. And the next thing you know, he felt this dropping sensation, and he was in this prison. And it was like a light overhead, like one hanging light, and there was a guy in the corner, and he looked sick and like decrepit, and it was just like the sadness, this energy coming off of him. He had that experience, and then that was it. He was pulled out of it. Later on, after him telling me this and starting to grow astrally, I started to have an experience of this. And I don't know if I went to the same person, but I've only ever gone to people. And they're like, I don't know if they're locked there by choice or if they've done something, if it's like contract related, like what you're saying, but they will be in these places and there's just this despair coming off of them. And there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just there. I've been shown it. It's not like I can stop it from happening to them. Maybe I don't have like the level of authority to break them out of it, but it's like they're there and they know why they're there. Yeah. And it's just like, I even had one person, when I showed up, they looked and they're like, oh, it's you again. It's like, I've never been here, and I was pulled out of it. And so I don't know what it is. I honestly don't, but there's a lot of strange stuff. I've experienced this astral jail and like a school, and Michael and I have talked about that before, but like this astral school where there are many different people learning, and there's always like this. It's really interesting. It gets super, super deep, and I'm really curious to hear you guys' take on those things.
Yeah, and now you see why I was like approached you both and said, hey, let's do a show about this, because I had a feeling after interviewing both of you, you guys would love and play off each other really well.
Definitely.
And I want to take a moment and sidestep for a second, because we've got like a few questions in the chat room, and some of them I think are really good, and I'm actually curious myself to see what your guys' answers to them would be. And first one up is Selena Ingles, and she says her question is, what is going on with the energy lately? Feels really intense to me. So I'm curious, do you guys have any insight on what's going on energetically with the planet and the universe?
I can comment on that quickly. I believe, at least with respect to maybe the last 60 to 90 days and, the pending 60 days as we end the very contrived, year of 2024, what does that even mean, right? 2025, like, they're just numbers, but it does stand to reason that we are at what we would call a collective decision-making phase with respect to what we're deciding to allow in terms of reality in the coming months. I think that leads to a lot of like really distinct types of internal uncertainty that a lot of people who are tapped into, if you want to call it astral or non-physical energy, will feel, but they won't necessarily know what it is. They just have this sort of like unease and this kind of anxious feeling, and things are kind of more intense than usual. And I've just noticed myself and people that we've been working with have been having a fair bit of that lately. And I've noticed that wave of uncertainty tends to come in, like I said, when we're deciding upon timeline shifts, because a lot of people say these events are going to happen and this thing's going to occur. And from what I can tell, we are constantly changing our mind and deciding. Like, the collective consciousness keeps shifting, and so I think you're experiencing a good amount of that. And then that's also kind of combining with, I think we're in like we started like a solar maximum, whatever that means. What I take it as is a stage of really big solar activity, which for those of us that have open crown chakras, you're going to get really dissociative, or you'll pick up other people's feelings really easy, or like if there's a jagged kind of vibe going around, you're just going to absorb it, which is both good because it gives us an example of how our abilities are opening up. But then it's hard because you really have to clear yourself more and like stay more sovereign and really be mindful of your thoughts, because all those things lead to thought transference, which I think is a huge thing that I've just been noticing with people. But anyway, I'll watch out because I'll talk on that one forever. But so what do you think, Hal?
No, I think that's spot on, actually. The way I like to put it is this: what we're experiencing, it isn't anything new as far as energy goes, just because we're experiencing just a movement of a cycle. I feel like there are these continual cycles, especially every few years, where energy is ramping up and we're moving into this new level, this new stage of our awareness collectively. And you may just be picking up on that shift and that change. I would focus more on your own experience of this as a sign that you are becoming more intuitively aligned with what's happening. As far as the astral realm goes, there's always this like progression and movement of energy. Think of our time here on this earth as, again, I believe Dolores Cannon talks about us being here as a school. And there are different movements, different chapters of our lives and our experience as humans, just our human experience here, is broken up into these chapters where energy moves, and it's lesser and it's greater from time to time. It's like this pendulum swing of energy. And so whenever someone says, hey, I feel this quickening, this increase, well, we're about to reach a new level energetically. And that new level is supposed to prepare us for the valley that we're going to go in afterward. And from my experience, whenever there's this newness of energy, this inflow and this increase of your own personal energy, it's because you're about to be tested on something that you were supposed to have learned. And so I think it's very powerful that you're experiencing it. There are a lot of people who don't tap into it, who never experience this changing and this increase. You've probably been experiencing a crazy amount of synchronicities, numbers, people, events, people talking about movies or books, or this transference of like thoughts. You'll be thinking about something that you want, that you're interested in, and other people just announce it. Like, hey, this new thing is going on. So this like connectivity that's going on is really interesting. But I would stress keeping in mind that the lessons you learned in the previous season of your life are going to be tested here in the upcoming season.
Ooh. I like that. And it brings up, Aurora has a good question, and I think it kind of fits right along where we're at right now. Is, have you ever come across any negative entities in the astral plane?
Lord. Yeah.
Me personally, yes. I have definitely. If you can go ahead if you want to.
Oh no, please feel free.
Yeah, I especially when I first started projecting, I would run into this instance where it was very surprising, but I would project and there would be this shadow waiting for me, and it would always end the trip, always. And I would stop it right there. I'd get back in my body, flip the lights on. I was like, all right, I'm done with this. That's enough of this right now. Sometimes even weeks I would stop just because of how like just the sort of fear that you feel out of body is like, it's like, who am I? It's like the identity of who I am is fear now. And I have to stop this. but I would project in the beginning and there would be this shadow waiting for me. And it would be, almost like it would be standing along a wall, kind of peering out from the side, just watching me. And I'd be like, yeah, it's time to go. I better cut this out. And as I progressed astrally, I would notice that during my trips, there would always be this steady encroachment of darkness into the scene. And it was always so strange. It was like a rolling fog would come in, but it was darkness taking over everything that I could see. And I would have to run from it. I would have to leave the projection experience and then return to my body and just stop everything. Even one time, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm in a room and the room is getting dark. I was outside. I was doing my thing. I was flying through the neighborhood, and it was like night. It was starting to envelop everything. And what came with it was this siege of just terror. Like, okay, I have to go. I don't know what this is, but I have to leave now because whatever this is tougher than me. That only started to subside when I started to connect with my higher self more. I started to make, okay, when I project, I need protection. I need to call whatever it is that's here to protect me. Then I started to experience less of that. But most definitely, there is some sort of energy. There are entities out there that you can encounter. Those weren't even the entities so much. Those are just like this energy that exists there that'll swallow you up if you let it.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's brilliant. It's funny that you talk about that wave of ultra negativity. Once again, very, very shockingly similar experience. Very early on, like I had said, this was 2008 and 2009, right when which was oddly enough way before any awakening stuff, anything like that. It was right after that DMT phase where I think my energy body had been opened up as well. I began to have experiences where I would be face to face with a host of shadow beings that were living in my house at the time. It was like they would acknowledge me, I would acknowledge them. And it was one of the it was a thing I wanted to write about in the book, but I didn't really know where to fit it in. But it was like the way that I knew at that stage of my life that I was out of the body. It sounds crazy, but I could smell the ceiling. And it was like, then all of a sudden I could tell that I'm like, okay, I'm above. I'm above everything. And I would look, and these beings would like walk through and come into this dining room area in our house, and they would just stare at me. And I remember looking at them, and it was it wasn't what I would call paralysis, but it was like I was transfixed and completely locked in the sense of fear that they would create. And there was, maybe not too many times when we had that experience, but it was a thing where I had come to understand that I was like, this is a real thing that's happening. Oddly enough, my son was 4 around that time, and he began to experience it and cry and wake up at night saying, Daddy, there's this man in here. And I remember, like, what? And so there was real crazy stuff that would occur. Fast forward a few years later, when things started to become more deliberate for me post 2015, I had definitely had that experience where for me, it wasn't like a wave. It was like a wall of, it sounds so dumb when I talk about it now. It was like a wall of tentacles that was filling up filling up the space that I was in. And it was like, as I could see it and feel it and hear it, I could feel it entering the back door of my house. I could feel it coming closer. I could feel the vibration of it. And it was like pure terror. In that stage, I wish that I could say I knew like some technique to get away from it or leave. I didn't know that I could do those things because I had such little experience. You know what I mean? I didn't know what was possible. But oddly enough, it's to make it even sillier. There was a being that showed up, and it sounds so dumb, but it was literally like a janitorial spirit. And he was glowing, and he took this massive broom and just swept away this wall of tentacles. And I remember coming out of it, and I was like crying, going like, I don't want, I mean, really, but that was a theme for me at that stage. Everything that happened, I would just be like, I don't know, every time I thought I was crazy, but oh Lord, man, it was.
No, that's good. That's powerful. You say it sounds crazy, but this janitor, like it's no,
the guy with a big broom, and he was like,
I don't know, like these
away,
higher beings, these angelic beings, they represent in such strange ways sometimes. Like first meeting a being that I would call an angel, he was wearing had to have been like 10 feet tall. I was looking up at him when I was out of body, and he came through. He had like a long black trench coat. His hair was like blonde, and he was like he was standing at like this big open like window sill, and he had his like foot up on it, hand on his knee, and
Yeah.
the wind was like pushing him back, and it was raining outside like a noir film. And I was like, who is this guy? I don't know why they present these ways sometimes, but that's very interesting. The janitors, that's funny.
Yeah.
I like that. But the tentacles, like the wall of tentacles, I've heard it described exactly like that by someone else. It was like right when you said it, I was like, yeah, that's it. For me, it came through as this like encroaching shadow that was just hate, fear, just coming. I don't know why. Maybe you attract it when you're out of body. This like you're like a beacon of light, and everything is like, whoa, what's that? And they just come after you. So I don't know. It gets intense, definitely.
It's a very strange thing. It's really cool to hear the similarity in other people that have had those experiences. I remember right at the end of that moment, as the thing was getting swept away, it sounds so crazy, but I could see that the actual source of it was very small. And it was like this very small sort of a being. It was like a little black cube, and it had the ability to project like a film screen onto a version of like reality. And I remember just noticing that as I watched it go away. I was like, what? You know how you pick up these random details? What's crazy is I didn't realize that for like a really long time later, until I remember talking about it with people and going like, oh yeah, there was this black cube that was actually, shining it on everything. And it's a crazy thing. And so I guess the reason why I'm saying that is because it's cool to note the authenticity and the similarity in experiences. I think it shows us that, when you actually believe this version of 3D, it's like there's a lot of standardized things that can occur. And I think they'll kind of show you that, oh, that's a thing that'll happen out there, So
yeah. And what's interesting for me is when I was in the astral plane, it's like I had a knowledge of everything around me is either is energy, so it's either I can run from it, but you can't hide from it, or you can face it. And so I remember the first time, it's like I felt this shadowy, dark entity coming towards me, and I was like, I can run, but it's always gonna be chasing me. So something in me said, turn and stand. And so I thought, okay, I'll just stand here and, maybe because I'm not afraid, nothing will happen. And all of a sudden, I remember getting hit in my arm by some dark energy and like, ow, that hurt. And going, I can't just stand here. If I'm going to be here, I need to defend myself or, go somewhere where it can't find me. And so I thought, well, being, I'm here in the astral, here in space, apparently I'm limitless. So let's take it on and, had that human arrogance in me. And I got to tell you, I barely got out of there, but I woke up the next day. And what reminded me of it was when I got up, it was like my arm was sore where that energy had hit me. And my whole body felt like it had been beaten to a pulp. And I had to sit in bed for a little bit and be like, I'm awake, but I need energy to start flowing because the body's too sore to move. And going, what happened? And then it's like I have a flash of being on the astral plane and going, oh my God, what happens in the astral can appear here. I can't have this happen. So creating a place, and I think I was talking with you, Cal, and I might have mentioned it with you, Matthew, is creating a place in the astral where when I encounter these entities or energies, and if they do, we struggle, I can go and regenerate and heal up before returning to the body so I don't bring it here.
Yeah,
it's cool that you can do that. Wow.
Yeah, that's the next level. That's the next level experience for sure. This man was fighting the darkness. They're like, I never want to put this stigma on people trying to project, but there is, yeah, the best thing I could say is there is warfare. There is some sort of battles that can happen there. And it is like light and dark. It is as basic and fundamental as that. I mean, when you go far enough, you see, this is just a natural process of how energy moves. So it's like, okay, well, this is just what happens at every level of reality somehow. But you move far enough where you can see it. Say you get to the void and you have these experiences. Everything is in harmony, even though there's chaos. Chaos is the agent of harmony sometimes. So it's just interesting. Fighting against it, definitely. Like when you when you reach that level, you're like, all right, man, let's do this. I've had that a few times where it's like, all right, come on, let's give it a shot. Let me get a crack at it. And if I remember right, there is this residual sort of tiredness, at least. I haven't woken up very many times physically sore from it. It's happened a few times, but more often it's just physical exhaustion. Even after waking up, it's like, oh my goodness, like I just ran a mile. I'm exhausted. So yeah, I definitely get that.
Yeah. And I also did, like you were saying, Cal has learned you got to take protection with you and, protect yourself while you're out there as well, and learn, hey, if it's energy, what energy can I bring up to help me to either defend myself or make myself disappear so I don't have to take this on.
It's like this invisibility that you take with you. I'm a studier of like a lot of occult practices and grimoires and just magic, whether it be, Egyptian or Islamic origins, things like this. And one of the things that is always talked about in these grimoires is invisibility. And now initially someone will read those things and be like, oh, I'll be invisible here. And there is some merit to that, but it's much more powerful of something, a skill to shield yourself or cloak yourself when you're out of body, because you will be seen by things. Yeah. I've been seen many times by people that I was like, oh my gosh, they actually saw me, is that there's no way they could have. There are defenses that other people have put up, people that don't want you certain places. And knowing a spirit to communicate with and say, hey, I need your help. I want you to basically cloak me so that I can move through this place unseen. You're not unseen from physical people. That's not the point. You're unseen by these astral things, these negative entities that are like bandits on a road that you're trying to travel on. So it's very powerful being able to, one, build a place and take protection, but also have that cloak over you to be unseen. I found it very useful.
It is. And one of the aspects I learned that I had was I can go into the shadow zones, and I have this cloak that I put on that allows me to move freely through. So if someone calls out and says, I need help from there, and if I hear them, I'll put the cloak on, go find them, see what's going on. And when I find them, then I open the cloak, the light shines out, and it the light burns off the shadow that's attached to the person in trouble, so I can pull them up. And I make sure to tether all, cut all things that are tethering to. And when I turn around, it's I'll see everything in the shadow realm rising up, oh wait, you're not supposed to be here. Mm-hmm. And it's I'll do a burst of light, cloak myself again with the person, and when we leave, then I remove the cloak and I'm like, hey, be careful, you're lucky I was here, to help you out. Mm-hmm. Just watch where you're going and watch what you're doing. And, and I'm glad you asked for help, because there is help available if you ask for it, and then send them on their way and go about doing what I was doing. But yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about it as the grimoire cloak of invincibility.
Are these, I'm sorry if you had a question, Matthew.
No, please. Yeah.
Are these just normal projectors that you're finding? I ask because most people don't realize that they project just about every night. And they think there was I'm not having the experience. Oftentimes you're just not remembering the experience. and you've wandered off into this really negative place, and the next thing you know is like, oh, I've just got this terrible luck, and my love life is awful, and I just lost my job. Is like when all of a sudden, like, you're connected to all these negative things because you're going places in the astral. So I'm curious, is like, are these people that you're encountering, or are these like beings that you're helping?
I think it's a mix of both, because I think quite a few of them, I believe, are, like you're saying, people who didn't realize that they were astral traveling and kind of just drifted out and were picked up by another being and brought to that realm. And it's like now they're stuck there and they don't know why they're stuck there because they don't realize where they are. And some of it, I feel like, are beings who, and I think you guys kind of hinted at it earlier, and was when you're in the astral plane, when you're shining your light, your essence, who you are in spirit form and energy form, you are indeed a beacon for everything around, and everything will want a piece of what's going on, because when you think about it, you're emanating like a love energy, if that's where you're at. And the forces of the shadows and the darkness that wants to control and enslave people will be like, hey, we don't want that energy here. So they'll try and keep you from there. So they'll send their energies and beings to prevent you from coming, and people of the light will be like, hey, I like this energy, I want a piece of that energy, and may not even realize they're doing that. And all these will create cords and everything on you and start to siphon you down. And it's not necessarily always a bad occurrence that's causing it, but as the individual, you got to watch it and tether, and cut the cords yourself. And even if it is a positive person, like say Matthew and I hung out in the astral and UCal, and we formed, cords together. Well, we may not realize it, and we're dragging each other down. We're not negative, bad people. We just didn't realize what we had done. We forgot, that we were hanging out doing this, and, cut those cords. So I feel like one of the points why I'm bringing that up is I don't want everyone to think everyone that drains you is a negative entity or a negative force. It could be a positive force that just didn't know it was doing it. But I hope that answered your question, Cal.
No, that's perfect. Yeah. It addressed a few things that I feel like should be within common knowledge for anyone trying to project, or anyone trying to open their energy and open their psychic abilities and things. You're going to run into people who are just in need of help energetically, and as a byproduct, just being around them, they're going to sap that energy from you because you have it. And it's not like they're negative people. It's just like, hey, they need that energy and you've got a ton of it. And so they're sapping it from you, unbeknownst to them. And it's like these psychic vampires, as people do it accidentally. So yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And it's very cool that you're having those experiences, and I will immediately follow it up with what may be a very foolhardy statement. In the work that I do, I honestly don't take any form of protection. I do not create a layer of energy around my body. I don't call in a single ascended master or an archangel or anything like that. However, I think part of that is because of the manner in which we're kind of using, I would say, projection energy. At this stage of my journey, it's been almost daily through the lens of doing energy clearing sessions with people. And so it's like when I go into that, it's weird. What I would like to say, and there's a few people in the chat who've done sessions with me will know that we connect, with the higher self and those that are with us in that moment for the purpose of healing. And I've just noticed that as long as I've kept it within that sort of almost spiritually clinical kind of bubble of energy, there is, in all of the 8 years I've been doing this professionally, there have been a mere fraction of times in which some sort of energy or some piece of a negative influence has come in and messed that up. And I say that, at least with my knowledge, there has only been a few times in which that has taken place. Now, any real practitioner is going to leave the possibilities open, because there's so much that we don't know. But that said, one thing that I do, and I think for me this has been the strongest form of, if you want to call it, protectionary energy, which I guess this is a thing that I actually do in the physical world as well. When I go into places, with my wife, or when we travel, and I leave offerings for spirit, and I make agreements when I enter a space. Like when I begin to, and this is, it always sounds kind of woo woo, but in the sessions we do, we're projecting both of our consciousness within a person's physical body for the purpose of opening up gateways and sort of passage points and channels. And what I've noticed is that when we keep it within that realm, it's just a very, very different type of experience, rather than moving outside of the body. Although it's weird, because those who know will be like, well, the gateway to everything outside of us is actually through us. So it's kind of a sort of a double-edged sword. But I've just found, like, the greatest value and safety, protection, and clearing that I've noticed within myself in doing this has come from creating those offerings and making declarations to spirit, like literally speaking out loud when I enter a situation and say, I honor all those of you that exist within this space, good or evil, right or wrong. I'm entering this moment for the purpose of healing and correction. You know what I mean? And it's like, I will come in there and say, please allow me into this space. This is what I'm here to do. And so I've heard people criticize that and be like, well, that's stupid. You need to, do this or that. And honestly, for me, that seems to work. However, let me just add one other thing. Hopefully I'm not going on too long here. What I will say, though, is that anyone, and this has been my opinion and experience, so you guys feel free to disregard, but I believe that anyone who makes it part of their life process, their duty to move in and out of the physical body and to connect with other people in whatever form we do it, just the byproduct of that is we're going to absorb their energy on some level. We're just, you know what I mean? It's like kind of like when you were a kid and you'd go to your friend's house and you come home later and you're like, oh yeah, it smells like so-and-so. You know what I mean? Like, we pick up the essence of others. And I've noticed for me, that has been the byproduct. And I think there's a daily kind of self-clearing that I continue to do. But for me, that's been where the negativity comes in, which kind of goes along with what I was shown. And I will pause after this. And I don't know if this is how it is for other people, but one of the early stages experiences I had with spirit was they were like, look, no one's going to kill you in this life other than you. We will block all these things, but we cannot protect you from yourself. And it's weird because ever since that day, it's like somehow it's been the truth. And so I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's been my experience.
That was a mic drop for sure. That's powerful, man. Yeah, I feel that. I claim that too. That's a powerful energy. Definitely.
And I think why that works for you, Matthew, or you don't need the protection, is you're not like doing like what Cal and I are talking about, like going out and just exploring the astral. You're in a set place that you've set aside and created, so to speak, for your work.
Actually, that's very, very true.
That's a good point.
So, yeah.
I didn't look at it that way.
That makes a lot of sense, which for me, it's been completely natural, which honestly it is. I will admit, it's really easy for me to remote view and connect literally inside people's anatomy within their body. And I think in doing that for so many years, it's changed the way in which I move outward, in that I kind of, sounds dumb, I don't in the same way that I used to. It's almost like I realized, like, oh, you're supposed to use it for that purpose, and but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. It might open up again later, but
no, there's a flow to it. Definitely, there's a change and a difference that even I've noticed in how exactly I go about connecting with people. Because what I do is because I've had so much experience connecting with different spirits and entities, I'll I'll project, and it's almost like at first I used to think I had to traverse to someone I was going to help. Now it's just like I'm thinking and connecting with their energy. It's like an empathic thing. I feel who they are, so that like, oh, you smell like so and so. That's perfect. I totally understand that. That makes perfect sense. It's just like you're just feeling their energy. You're opening yourself up to feel that energy, and then you're there with them. And from there, I'll connect them to the spirit that they want to connect with. Whether it be their higher self, it's almost just like, without making it sound too silly, it's just like taking an outlet. It's like plugging something into an outlet. You're connecting them to this energy. And other times it's like the connection is there. It's just blocked. There's just like blockage, and sometimes it's emotional. People have these blockages to things, and you're just clearing out that emotional baggage. And oftentimes afterward, people say, "It's like I cried. I had this experience where like I even had one person say like, I was like, yeah, you sent me the message that everything was done, and like right before that, I had woken up from a dream. I was with my mother, and they said like I was crying, and I was just moving all of this negative energy out. And it's like sometimes that's what needs to happen for you to have these awakening and upgrade sort of experiences, is this clearing of emotional baggage. And so yeah, it's really powerful that you can change your way of projection, and it changes naturally. There's a flow to it that I notice.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like I always have a hard time saying sort of evolution of sorts, which to me, I feel like that's kind of what these things are meant for. You know what I mean? Everyone will find some sort of application for like, oh, I realize I can now use that in this way. And, you know, I mean, not that everyone needs to, but I think for me, that's what really gave purpose to a lot of the early stage madness. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Michael. I realized you're about to say something, but can I just ask a question? And I would love to hear your idea on this, Cal. Have you encountered, or can you talk about what you have encountered in terms of what we often call extraterrestrial energies or beings when you've been out there in the realms?
It's good that you asked that. And this is before I even started astral projecting consciously and gained the skill to navigate that. I would have these periodic experiences of waking in the middle of the night to a bright light shining through my window. And it was just, my bed faced the window, and like the window was on the other side of the room. And I'd wake up because of this light shining in my face. I'd wake up, and then the thing would go up, and I would always be confused. I never told anybody about it because it just sounded crazy, and I never knew what it was. And then one day I was watching someone's video, and they were channeling, and they said, it always baffles me. They said, like they were talking about, I think they were channeling like a group of beings. I'm not sure if it was just one or if it was a group, but long time ago, they said, I'm the spirit that's with you. It's like I'm the protected being. I'm the light that shines on you when you sleep. And they just kept going through these things, and I was like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then I started to like pay attention to this. And now throughout my projection experiences, when I'm led to, the best way I can put it is it's like a portal. It's like a gateway opened in the sky. It sounds really goofy, I know, but I'll be led by this like double of myself, and it'll lead me up, and I'll just be moving up through clouds, whatever the case may be, and I'll always reach this like blue sort of doorway, and it's this opening, this like portal, and going through it, I enter what I can only describe as like the DMT space, this like weird, flowy, everything is a part of itself, technicolored thing. And there, I feel like there are intelligences. There are these beings there that communicate. And throughout my experience with them, I do believe they are these like ET sort of energies and these intelligences. And for the longest time, I've thought that aliens aren't as much a physical phenomenon as we believe it is, as much as they are an extra dimensional or a spiritual phenomenon. If they are beings from another galaxy or another star cluster, whatever, they've reached a point in their evolution where they're able to traverse spiritually. They're able to move and interact in this like astral energy sort of experience. And so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that as well, because I definitely don't think it's something physical only. I think they're advanced to a point of like energetic movement.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. Were you going to say something? I didn't mean to.
Oh no,
Before I
I
start
was
going on a
enjoying
rant.
this, and it actually ties into your second question as well about the ETs. Is I shared, and it might have been with one of you both, but when I started astral traveling, I would go to like the ship of Ra in orbit. Then I would go to this like pads that are floating above the moon, and that would project me to where I was needed to go. Say, Sirius B to talk with the ETs there. Then, as I progressed on and started understanding travel in the astral plane, I would skip the ship of rock, go to the pad, go to the ETs, and eventually it was like I figured out I don't need either of this to help me. I can move at the speed of a thought, and the second I thought about, hey, I wonder what the aliens and Sirius B are up to, if they need anything. Next thing I know, I'm standing right in front of them before I even get that thought out in my head. So it is an evolutionary as we learn ourselves what we're capable of. And I feel like the ETs communicate with us more in our quote dream space when we're on the astral plane because our minds are more open and our spirit is more open to the truth of what's out there and what we're experiencing, and it's not going to be filtered by the ego and what's going on here on the earth. And so I feel like that's where they're really reaching out to us and making contact with people, and certain people are saying like, yeah, I talked with these races, this is what they have to share with us, and the reason is because they're out on the astral and communicating more freely with them and saying, okay, I know what you're sharing with me is your truth, it's my truth, I'm going to share it with all the people who it'll be their truth when they're ready. And when they're not, if they're not, they're just not going to listen. It's all right. But the seed will be planted. And that's why I think it's the beauty of that. And it's not going to be this, hey, there's a ship parked out in the park. And these people are coming out with banners saying, we're here. We come in peace. Who wants to chat? We have answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it were like that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But I've just experienced it more through that energetic connection, like what you're saying. And people have described seeing vessels and things like that, and I would always be interested in talking to them and kind of seeing like what the rest of their life is like and the other experiences that they have. And I'm always perplexed by people who encounter the lights, like these orbs of light that appear. And just because of my own personal experience of having seen that for so long, and like I feel like they're connecting to the same thing. It's like that's the way that I put it is that's the fourth dimensional shadow here in this 3D place is this orb of light.
Yeah.
This energy that comes through. So I love that stuff. Fascinates me.
Damn, I love it. Here's what's crazy. Which I'm sure you can guess what I'm about to say. That was very much what happened to me when I was a kid. It really, no, I mean,
That's crazy.
you can go seek out my book out there for anyone that wants to find it. But that was one of the early stage experiences, and it was actually this little blue spark that would come in my room. I was like I would say about 6 to 8 years old. And to me, it was normal. There was no reason to ever talk about it. But one night it came to the tip of my nose, and usually it would just come and then I would go to sleep. And to me, it was a good memory. but there was a lot. I came from a very chaotic environment at that stage of my life, so maybe there was like a protectionary thing that came with it as well. But one night it came to the tip of my nose and I didn't go to sleep, and I actually had a very, very strange experience where it's funny that you talk about platforms, Michael, because I believe those are real. There's like these observational kind of technological platforms or these sort of installations that are placed. And, a lot of the secret space program people talk about it. But for me, I was actually taken to one of those, and there was this vast meeting and all this. It's a far too long of a story to discuss here. But for me, it was amazing up until that one night. And that was the last time it ever happened to me. And whatever occurred in the midst of that experience in which I was taken to this observation platform, and we had to walk through all these structures and watch there was these almost alien type men that gave me a little cup of water, and when I drank that cup of water, I woke up back in the body here on Earth, and it was like some sort of trauma had occurred to me that I still don't know to this day. I would say what it was if I knew, but it was like I only knew because I was shaking and crying and screaming for like hours that night. And everyone was like, "What happened to Matthew?" And that was the last time it had ever occurred in my life. And so it's just funny to hear that. It's funny to hear that story. However, later on, I would say post 2015, when the energy really opened up, it was very much like you were talking about, and I would move through these portals in the ceiling. That was actually how I began to understand what a portal was, because I could feel and watch my body and see myself going through this portal in the morning, this shimmering green opening in the ceiling of my bedroom. And I remember going, "Is that what a portal is? Why is this happening to me?" And so within the weird experiences of that was when these for me it was these praying mantis type beings, and there was two of them in particular that had shown up. And it's funny because earlier you had been speaking of how you had met this sort of humanoid person, and he like put himself up against this window and you can see the wind in his hair. And I had a very strange experience with a praying mantis being that was very similar to that. And it sounds odd, but it was almost, shockingly similar, because he was sort of leaning up against the surface and kind of just checking me out, just really looking at me like, what's up with this guy? And I was like, "Who are you?" Because when you go into those spaces, or at least for me, there was like this element of this thing that activated in my brain, and it was like a trillion questions and thoughts and images and experiences would all explode in my head at that moment. And I remember when I would look at these beings, it was like I couldn't control the series of thoughts that were happening, and the only thing I could form was, "Who are you? What is it?" And anyway, there's a whole series of events which I won't get into that were with that. But one of the things that I was shown in that moment was it was almost like he had a sense of humor, and this praying mantis being was literally giving me this feeling of like, "You are not ready. You're not you." It was like he was annoyed, like this. "No, you're not ready for this." And that was when they told me, which is maybe the reason why I'm doing this long story. For me, it was that I had to detox heavily, and I kept asking this being, "Who are you? What is this?" And he said, "Purify your body." And it was like every cell in my body heard it and felt it. And luckily, years later, I did take that advice. But in the beginning, it was like, it was shocking. And so for me, what I understood, this is the last thing I'll say on that. For me, what I understood was that I was part of a multi-generational kind of, I don't know if it was an experiment or what it was, but my maternal grandfather worked at Los Alamos National Laboratories in the 1970s doing very normal things. He was not like a top secret person. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he wasn't working on alien craft. He was just a regular dude. But that was where it had started for us. And so in the midst of those experiences, they had shown me like, this is where it came from this part of your family. And so I have a weird feeling that that's going to be a very similar thing for both of you guys as well. There's going to be an ancestral connection in some form, and it doesn't have to be through like an occupational thing. But what I've noticed is that most of the people that will have these experiences where at some stage in our life we start to move in and out through the body in our own way, it's usually because we did it before, or there's some element of us, an ancestral or sometimes extraterrestrial energy that will come in and go, "Hey man, let me show you this," in some way. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening for all of us. But anyway, that was a lot. I'll stop there.
No, that was great. I love that. I love that for sure. Yeah, I definitely touch bases with you on the light. Like it's crazy that we've had that experience. Very crazy. Because it's one thing that I see a lot are these like orbs, these balls of light. Especially when I'm projecting, I'll see these orbs, and I'll see them around people. And I wasn't always like energetically or psychically gifted. Again, none of what I do or any of that stuff has ever been like I was just naturally good at it. I've always wanted it, but it was like I had to put in a whole lot of work. And I was really fortunate enough to meet the right people who were just really naturally gifted, and I just basically like latched onto them and didn't let go. But yeah, there have been times where people have just been talking, or they'll do like some hand gesture, or something will happen, and they'll just be like these orbs that fly out of them, just like currents of energy, just like shoot out of them like lightning. I'll be like, "What is that? Like, what's like, what's going on there?" And so it's really interesting to hear you talk about that, because you said it was like sparking, like, some sort of thing. That's what it looks like. It's like this, like, this sort of stuff that I see. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, now it's my turn to be Matthew, and
Yeah.
I was on a paranormal investigation, and I walked out in the hallway because something drew me out there, and it's pitch black down this corridor. But I start to see this blue sparking ball of energy start coming towards me, and I'm like frozen, because I'm like, what is this? And, is this a spirit? What, is this an alien? What is this? Because it's the first time I've seen it, and it looked like fireworks were going off of it, and it's coming. And it gets right in front of me. And all of a sudden, one of my friends that's on the investigation, who's a medium, walks up behind me and in my ear goes, there's something right in front of you, right? I'm like, yeah. And I'm sitting there, and it's like I have the feeling, and I go, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not backing down. What's going on? And it like just backed up and disappeared. But what was interesting is, like, maybe a minute afterwards, I go to another room, and I have a body cam on me. My body cam shuts off the second I entered this room by itself. It only recorded 23 seconds. And this white milky mist appears in this room, starts coming towards me, and I put my hand up, and I'm like, no. It's like, you're not taking me from here. And it disappears, and I turn and I leave, and the body cam starts recording at that moment when I exit the room, and it recorded 5-minute intervals after that. It only recorded that one entrance at 23 seconds. And I asked a couple of my cop friends about it, going, has your body cam ever just done a random, like, stop recording and then start itself up again? And they said, no, they can't do that. It's impossible. You had to turn it off. I'm like, my thumb was nowhere near the power button. I would have known if I had turned it off. And they were like, yeah. And the ironic thing too was that body cam I had to replace. It stopped working after that.
Wow.
So I thought it was interesting, as you were saying, Matthew, you saw the blue spark. I was like, I saw the blue spark in it.
Okay, we're seeing the same thing. All right.
And it totally jacked up my equipment.
It's very real. That's the manifestation of fourth density energy. At least that's my understanding. And then also, I've been told and experienced that what I've been shown through experiences, that is a good example when they talk about, for those that are watching, or will see this in the future, when they talk about what does it mean when the third eye is actually open, that will be an example of what takes place. There's a difference in the photo, like, receptors within your eyes. They start to interact differently, and it's like you will literally start seeing these sparks and orbs, and kind of like how you're saying, like, things will come out of people. Or I used to see like a little spark next to people's head when I first started doing like readings. And that I don't know, to me it was like a cheat code. I would be doing a reading with someone and I would look up and I would see like a little pin prick of like light or a little spark, and I'd be like, that means yes. Or I took it as that. Who knows, maybe it did or it didn't, but to me that's the real example of the third eye. And I guess I'll say the weirdest thing to you, Cal, this whole time. Okay. I have this thing where when I'm looking at people, I will look to the side, and it's like you can definitely see the openings of the energy within your third eye. And I just say this is literally what I do all day, but you're a good example of a person that has activated the petals around the third eye. And I'm sure you've experienced this in your own way, but as it expands and it eventually connects with the navel chakra, there's this thing that occurs where around the third eye, like these little openings will happen. And for a lot of us, that's when we start seeing like a manifestation of non-physical energy outside of the body, versus like in the start, as we know, it's like within us and we're experiencing it in our inner world. And so anyway, it's just a very cool thing. A lot of people have it nowadays, but some people have a really big one. And you're just a really, really good example of that. So I hope that's not like too much information.
Oh, it's so weird. No. Again, I love that stuff. Definitely. I've got a question for you, and this is something I enjoy asking people who've like developed and who've grown in that way. When it started for me, my mentor, and this is like one of my fondest memories of learning from him. Like he's like a father figure to me. He took me into a hallway. We were out somewhere in St. Louis and at one of his friend's house or something like that. And he was late at night and he woke me up. I was sleeping on an air mattress. He woke me up and he was like, "Hey, I want to show you something." I'm like, "Okay, whatever. It's a cool start." I was like, "All right, so let's go." He takes me upstairs and we just look down a hall and it's dark, not so dark that you can't see your hand in front of your face, but like the lights are off and it's like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, "Just look." And he's like, "Do you see anything?" And at first I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, "Do what you do to bring the energy up." And so I did it. I just started to raise this energy. He was like, "Now what do you see?" And it was like a faint greenish, purplish like wave kind of went up over my eyes, very faint. Yeah. And then I started to see these dots. It was like static overlay on my vision, and they were colored and they were like shimmering and moving. And I was like, is this like static? I see like moving colors and static. And he's like, "That's it. That's exactly it. Like that's your third eye. Like you're seeing things through that." And when you start to see entities and things, they'll come out of it, almost like they're stepping out of a fog. And so like clockwork, anytime I see anything, it's like, here's this wall of static, this wall of like shimmering, purple, blue, it looks like, and they step through it and I see them like appear out of it and it's like greenish and all that. Have you had that experience?
Man, I believe yes. That is a very, very good example. The way that I have perceived it at times is very much like that. It's like this sort of, we might call like a spectral cloud, or this sort of effervescent kind of wave of energy that we can tap into. And there's been times when it's really strong, and it's like you can sort of breathe it in and it feels like you're sort of breathing in like the air in this really strange vibratory way. And then there's been these other times where it's a couple of them. I can think of three of them in particular, in which there's literally a cloud of smoke and a very I'll just say a reptilian being appeared within it. It was a very strange and bizarre experience. And I think what I took from that was that was one of the ways in which certain forms of higher dimensional or maybe lower dimensional consciousness will choose to show up through that non-local field of, if you want to call it, particulate energy or something. And to me, it's very, very real. And I would say that is just based on what I've experienced, which I always say this stupid statement: take it with a grain of salt. Every intuitive, especially like the ones that do it every day, it's like, you got to be really careful. Your body will show you what's true. But I've noticed that is an example of when we bridge the chakra gateways. And for the third eye, there's a secondary gateway that very few people will know about. Well, a lot of people know about it now, but in the past few years, very few people talk about it. And that's the stage where you are able to react in a different way to non-physical energy. And it comes from the navel chakra. There's like this connection from the third eye to the navel chakra that when you're able to pass energy through there, it gives you a different level of just visual acuity. And so anyway, I can feel myself about to go on a rant about it, but it's very real. And I would say, once again, the fact, just from my experience, the fact that you will describe that moment is an example of when you bridge those two places. Just like when you bridge the throat and the solar plexus, which is another one, you begin to command spirit in a different way. Your voice will change, or the ways in which you communicate with spirit will change. And anyway, I will pause there, but yeah, it's real, man. Very real.
That's powerful. I love that. I love that connection. Definitely. Yeah. And that's, I think I hadn't heard anybody else describe sight in that way. And so I guess I should. Well, I don't know how much time we have, but just like really quick, because I love sharing some of this stuff, because I feel like it's really going to clear some things up for people. What you're describing, I feel like, is a two-step process. Like you said earlier, how like when you see with like the mind's eye, or like you're psychically starting to open up and your third eye is opening, you'll see things like images flash in your mind.
Yep.
And you'll start to see these things play out in your mind. You're like, oh, like I'm seeing this. There's something in the room and I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. And it's like the image is forcing its way onto you. And so I describe that as like, that's the first stage of it. Out of two phases, that's the first phase. And the second phase is when you start to really open that third eye and really start to integrate that energy. You start to see an overlay over your eyes. And that's that, like, you described it perfectly, that like particulate energy, because it does look like fine sparkles of energy. And I see it all the time, every day. And when I raise this energy, it's like it becomes really, really vibrant and really intense. I'm starting to tap into that more. So there's definitely two phases. And what's happening when you're tapping into this and you're starting to perceive these energies is you're picking up on this fourth dimensional information, this higher dimensional information. And at first, because your energy body isn't developed enough, the only way your mind can process it is through internal images and sounds and things like that. But as you energetically start to wake up, it's like you give your mind another sense to interpret this information you're getting. And so you start to see it overlaid over everything. So this is a really awesome process. And it's real. It's absolutely real.
Yeah. I fully agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's the question in the chat room, and unfortunately, we're probably not going to have time to answer all of these, but I'll kind of hit on some that I feel like are really good questions. And here's one. Woo Riders DG is asking, I've heard experiences with astral travel that people say they almost didn't come back. And in some cases, people haven't come back. Is this true? What is your guys' thoughts on those kind of experiences?
From my own experience, I know we talked a bit about it earlier, just like getting stuck. You're here in this body because of a connection that goes on with the conscious mind. When people's conscious minds aren't here, what do we get? We get like the vegetative state. You're in a coma. You're not here anymore. You know, the body is practically vacant. It's just running on basic programming, if you will. You're here because you're connected almost like via radio signal to the brain, and consciousness is being relayed here. When you have these experiences, and the easiest thing I can say for people who don't project often, it's like having a really, really high dose psychedelic experience, and how there is absolutely the possibility of not coming back from those experiences. Is astral projection as intense? It definitely can be, depending on where you go and how much you put into it. But for the layman, someone just getting into it, first few experiences, the odds of you getting lost are slim. The odds of you going so far away from yourself to these different realms and dimensions where your sense of identity is dissolved is very slim. Most times when you first start projecting, and this is something I experience with all my students, I tell them, keep it short. The first time you project, you're probably not going to experience very much, and it's only going to last like 10 or 15 seconds at best. So getting lost is usually a product of having honed and refined yourself enough to go out on these long escapades and to go into these Buddhic realms and this void state. And then you find it hard to get back. You know, you have these experiences where it's like, oh, I've got to like really dig and pull out who I was to get back here. But again, it is possible in the same way it's possible to take 10 or 20 dried grams of psilocybin mushrooms and possibly go insane and never come back. Like that's the possibility. Integration would be so difficult that you never fully get back. You drive yourself crazy. I've dealt with this difficulty of integration where it is hard. And this is the last bit I'll say is like, it's hard to integrate and be normal here in society. That's the part about getting stuck. Like parts of yourself don't come back. You have a hard time reintegrating. And I'll open the floor to you, Matthew.
Actually, I did. I'll just be real. I don't think there's anything that I would add to that. I absolutely agree. Actually, no, I would just say one little thing. In my personal experience, from just what I've encountered, and everyone has their own version of it. I believe in nearly every case, our body and consciousness is tethered to this here and now realm, and we do return. There has been damages, and I've seen people that have had those, and I've also had a little bit of my own trauma from that. But I also believe that even if that happens, it's by design, and it's nothing that our soul can't handle. And honestly, it sounds woo-woo and kind of like just another phrase, but all of this stuff, I think it was created by us for us so that we could have these experiences. And so if your consciousness needs to have an experience of getting stuck within an astral space, I think there will be a reason behind it. And I don't know, maybe that's too much of an oversimplification, but anyway, yeah, that's how I see it currently.
No, that's excellent. Just don't go into it with fear of getting lost.
Yeah, right. Very much. I would say, please, if this is what I've told people, what I've experienced, please feel free to explore that realm. I think it's rightful for us as humans. Spirit will give you a little smack at times, or you'll have an experience to teach you things. And some people have them rawly, but I think it's rightful. And so,
The only thing I would add is trust yourself. If you're out and you're wanting to travel, but your spirit and body is saying, hey, it's time to come back, don't ignore that. There's reasons for that. So go back and listen to yourself. Trust yourself, because you have no better guide on the astral plane than yourself. And if you sense something's coming, turn around and, head the other way. Don't, feel like, oh, I know I should be going back, but I feel like there's something just around the corner and I really want to see what it is and go, because that could be a trap that's luring you out of your comfort zone into something that you shouldn't be in. And so, the only thing I would add is definitely when you explore, trust yourself.
Yeah, discernment, definitely. I mean, just like being here, you can go to the wrong part of town here, you can lose your way. But again, I do feel like there is that tether, there's that connection that we have here into this now moment. So I agree with you there, Matthew, that but there is usually when people ask, can you get stuck? It's followed by very closely, is there danger? Every aspect of life, there's going to be something that threatens this version of you that you believe you are. So there's always going to be some need to act with caution and cunning. So just, be mindful. I'd say just be mindful. Don't go and be afraid of everything, but be mindful.
We have a few minutes left, and Selena has a really good question that I feel like we should try and answer as best we can with the limited time we have, though.
Okay.
Short and sweet.
And she's asking, since time isn't linear, have you ever experienced moments of your life you haven't lived yet?
That's a huge question. Yeah, that's a huge question. If I may, I'll take this one really quick, hopefully. Really quick. There's a huge story. I write about it in my book. I can't get into all of it here. We literally don't have time for it. But in the astral, time, like I said earlier, you experience the sequential movements of time because you believe you're supposed to. Yeah, there it is. You finally got it. Awesome. You experience these sequential steps because you expect to. Everything exists in this here and now moment. Right now, everything is here. So you can experience every version of yourself, every reality, everything right now. You just have to basically like tune your dial to it so that you can experience it. I've had encounters where I was a different person in the future, in a different life, different family, wife, kids, everything. Even multiple lives where I was like a different species entirely. And there was one experience where I believe I saw like a tapestry of my life where every moment of my life was like up in front of me and I could see it all. Like it was just like a wall in front of me. And it was like, say you took a windshield and you hit it and it splintered into all these different shards. You saw like the spider web of the different cracks. And each splinter was a moment from my life leading all the way into my death. And I saw it and I was starting to be sucked in by it. And so it's interesting. You can definitely experience time differently because time is just a concept that we made up to navigate this reality. Once you move outside of this reality, it's not as feasible and necessary to have that. That's all I'll say about that.
Oh man, yes, I absolutely agree. I will add an oversimplification to that. That was one of the first things that showed me that I was actually leaving what I believe to be the physical human body, was because time would go backward and forward. And like I said earlier, I lived like a whole lifetime at one stage, and I mean, really bizarre things. And so for me, I think it was just sort of like a crash course and like noticing like, okay, time is totally different out there than it is here. And I think that's where a lot of people connect with the idea that they're in, like a space program as well, because there's a very close timeline in which many of us are interacting in a very technological realm like that. And so, I am kind of losing my train of thought and I don't want to overspeak it, but yeah, it's definitely been a factor. And oh yeah, there it is. The last thing I'll say is I was shown a future version of myself in 2015, and it was a version of myself that had actually made its way onto what was some sort of a higher dimensional society in which people would freeze their age and they would freeze their body in a certain place in a certain time, and they would then begin to connect with versions of themselves throughout time. And I was shown that that was one of the experiences that I was having, and it was essentially a version of me in the future that was choosing to look back and go, "Oh, there you are in 2023," and they'll sort of add help and sort of show me things. And so I believe, yeah, it was a future version of myself. And anyway, I know we're out of time, but yeah, that's how it's been. And yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
No, thank you for that. And yes, we are running close to the time, so thank you both for coming on, and I apologize we didn't get a chance to go through all the questions. What happened was for the first 15 minutes, the radio connection wasn't working, so I was working on getting that restored for the marathon. So we got it restored, and that's why I got a little backlogged on questions, but thankfully we got it fixed, and I will be giving the audio for this. So those of you on the radio station, don't worry. You're going to hear the first 13 to 15 minutes that you missed. It's all good. It'll be on the replay. And I am so blessed and grateful that you both were able to do this. And I feel like we need to have another one of these. And we don't need to make it the 2-hour event like Cal and I joke about. We don't have to wait another year to have this happen. We can make it sooner. So hopefully both of you will be up for that.
Sure, anytime. I am easily summoned. So
I love that.
yeah.
Easily summoned. Very good.
So thank you both, and thank you for such great conversation. And I know a lot of the folks here are enjoying it. And for those of you on the radio station listening to the marathon, you are in for a treat because next up, is eTalk TV Live. That is Jeff Murnell's show, the founder of eTalk.tv. And he has Brad Olson and Gigi of Shit Happens coming on. So you all enjoy that episode and have a wonderful Halloween experience. And I will be back tomorrow morning for another episode and starting the day off there. So enjoy the marathon, everyone.
Boom.
Okay, and now back to the show. I just ended the radio part, and so thank you. And one of the questions that Selena had, and I can answer offline, and we might be able to bring up on part 2 of this, is she was asking, have you ever encountered a death angel? And so I have a few times. And so I will tease everybody by saying, yeah, we will definitely have to talk about that on another episode. So
Nice.
thank you again to Matthew and Cal. You guys are awesome.
Again.
And I could not have picked 2 better guests to help introduce and guide people through the astral plane with.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate it. Anytime.
It was a pleasure. I'm down. Invite me as many times as you can stand me. I'll come around.
Careful, I may take you up on that.
I do hope so.
But
Cool.
yes, thank you. And to everybody out there, have a wonderful day, wonderful afternoon. Enjoy your weekend. Have a blessed Halloween. Happy Samhain to all those who celebrate that holiday. Blessed be, merry meet, and make it a wonderful rest of the October. And don't let it get to you. Keep yourself in a positive state of mind. Do you guys want to add anything to that as we sign out?
No, that's perfect.
Trump 2024.
Oh, totally.
Oh, man.
So, Aurora,
Right.
we will do this again. And Selena, it will be on this channel. So, blessings to you all. And blessings to everybody in the chat room and to those who were watching. And yes, I have no problem stating this because I already did cast my vote. Trump 2024. So
You just got canceled. Congratulations. Sorry.
yeah,
You just got canceled.
And we're hoping that this show will come back. No, but thank you, everybody, and make it a wonderful day. And I'm going to send us out now before we really do step into topics that will get us in trouble. All right. Have a great one, everyone.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks, you guys.